When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Meta Show. Today is Saturday, November the 20th, 2021. I am Brisk Rubal. I am joined alongside my dear friend and Rampage Incorporated co-host, Merkel Chen, who is filling in for the Matani, who's on vacation. Hi, Merc.
He's allowed to take those once in a while. Next time, I'd appreciate it if he'd tell us before the day of that we're doing that thing, but we can work around that. No problem whatsoever. We spend about 35 hours a week bullshitting anyway, so what's another hour thrown into the mix? Easy peasy, and super glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're here because honestly, doing the show by myself would be really boring. So whenever Mittens is not here, what you guys tend to find is that I go crazy and I want to invite every single friend that I possibly can find. And that's what I did again this week. So we have got a jam-packed show for you guys today. We're going to talk about the protest last week. We're going to talk about the results of the protest. And then, among other things, we're going to talk about the CSM. Because between the four guests and me on the show today, and I guess I should say three guests, because Merc is kind of a official co-host when Matani's on the mend, or he's out doing something fun like going up north to the Great White North with Mrs. Matani. We like to go, and we're going to talk about the CSM because we have a massive, huge amount of CSM experience, including the two longest-serving CSM members of all time and my favorite CSM member, my C-Daddy, Malcanis, who is the first CSM that was elected from the initiative in the modern CSM era, which I pit as starting at CSM 8 when they started with single transferable vote. So we're going to talk to those guys in a minute. Before we get there, Merc and I would like to talk to you guys about a little bit of drama that we saw this week on Reddit. Because you guys know me, I'm a drama llama. The drama llama doesn't follow Brisk Rubal home. He lives here. And it all has to do with one gentleman named Cable Uta and the Ahab-like pursuit of that gentleman by another gentleman named Minton, who is going after him in a bunch of different ways. And so I'm going to go ahead. We're going to throw the other guys up on the screen so I can show you some Reddit stuff. So you're going to get to see their faces, but we'll introduce them in a minute when we get to their part of the show. So I want to walk you guys through all the drama, and then I'm going to explain why we don't like what's going on. So, Post 1, the Cable Files, the RMT Empire. This came out 7 days ago. Minton posted it. Minton Benedal at the top there. He is a pilot in PL. Posted this, talking about Cable Uta, who you may know. Cable is very prolific stealer of NPC Satoyos. He is the guy that steals all the stuff out of them. He also happened to work together, colluding to get the top of the Proving Grounds and became the number one Proving Grounds leaderboard champion when the Proving Grounds were out. So he was accused by Minton of RMT. Unlike most of the situations where people are accused of RMT, Minton actually brought the evidence. He has audio file after audio file of Cable himself admitting that he did it. Now, obviously, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, and it's up to CCP to determine whether someone is in violation of the rules or not. But if I may say so myself, this is pretty damning evidence. But that wasn't good enough for Minton, was it, Merc?
No, and to say that these two particular shitbirds are about the skeeviest motherfuckers you could ever have the misfortune of running into in the video game EVE Online may be an understatement, and that may actually be an insult to skeevy people worldwide. Please continue, Brisk.
So it wasn't enough that Minton put as we would say in the business, all cable shit out on the street. Not only did he do that, he started putting together an in-game coalition, he called it, demanding that everybody who had done anything with cable, knowingly or unknowingly, stop doing that and join his group to go and eradicate cable from the game and do whatever he's going to do with him. Blah, 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 blah. And he began reaching out to leaders in a variety of different places. And those included leaders in the Imperium, leaders in Goons Forum Federation, leaders in the Initiative, among others. Here is a conversation between him. Actually, this is a leak from the Blue Donut, which is the FC only Discord that I administer on behalf of Sort Dragon, who put it together, talking about this whole situation. And he has a conversation with Darkshines and Pando and others, claiming that apparently the Initiative and Merkelchen and whoever else in the Imperium were not taking the threat of Cable's RMT seriously enough, and it was up to us to punish him for doing what he was doing. And the big issue that they had with us, not with Goons because they couldn't verify that Goons was doing this, but his big issue with the Initiative was Cable would tell us when people were running Satoyos and we would go kill them. And he demanded that we stop doing this because apparently us playing the game was somehow propping up Cable's RMT empire. And then he proceeds to try to entrap people into conversations demanding that we stop playing Eve by killing bad guys, doing things in space, because this might somehow help Cable do whatever it is he does. And he accuses Darkshines of having an arrangement with Cable. And he accuses Pando and Darkshines of having gone out and done a bunch of stuff. Now, is any of this true? No. It's all bullshit. Init has never worked with Cable in any way. We have taken intel he has provided us and used that to generate content, but everyone does that. That is how you play EVE Online. Someone gives you a tip. Hey, there's going to be a tri-fleet in this space running a Satoyo tomorrow. You guys should go kill them. Okay, great. Mark, is there any issue with that? Have you ever done that? Has that ever been a problem before?
No, I can't tell you how often, whether by Discord or Eve Mail, some puppy McFuckstick reaches out to me like, I'm forming a high council of protest against Cable Uda. Is the Goon Swarm interested in being a signatory to this agreement? And I'm like, go fuck yourself. We got nothing to do with your stupid shit. It's completely uninteresting, uninspired. If you have evidence of RMT, please send it to CCP so they can ban this fucking guy already. The dude, I had an entire conversation with this guy. The reason this Minton person is a huge piece of shit is because they not only did they pluck one line of what I said, he took half of one sentence of what I said, because if he included the second part, it would completely pull the rug out from under what he's trying to say. So do I respect a campaign of public pressure to try to get rid of a real dirtbag that makes the game a worse place to be? I certainly do. Do I respect that this piece of shit tries to draw a bunch of other people who have absolutely nothing to do with it, and thereby, in a big brain maneuver, almost completely eroding his own case? No, go fuck yourself. Have a nice day.
Bingo. And the best part is, after all of his talking and complaining about everything, it turns out that NCPL had an actual agreement with Cable, talking specifically about what they were going to do and how they were going to split all of these Satoyos and everything. And he just conveniently left that out. So what did this end up being? It was one man's crusade against another man for some reason, probably because he didn't share the profits with him enough. That being said, let me get on my soapbox for 1 minute. We all hate botting. We all hate things like RMT, real money trading, where people take in-game items and they sell them for real money outside of EVE. We don't like it because it damages the game, and often because the people who are behind that, most of the time, what they do is they steal people's accounts, they steal people's credit card information, They buy stuff in the game and then they sell it to unsuspecting players. It hurts the players, it hurts the game, and it hurts the ecosystem of the game as much as anything that we've seen. That's why we don't like it. Whose responsibility is it to deal with things like botting and RMTing and account hacking and the like? CCPs.
You
It
mean
is the
it's not the
companies.
High Space Council to determine who's guilty here?
It's amazing how you're not supposed to do that. Don't go out there. Listen, we don't need the Punisher in EVE Online. We don't need some vendetta or some vigilante going out there and trying to take down somebody, and that's how you're going to get him. You're not going to stop it. If there's real life money involved, you're not going to stop the guy by killing his shit. He'll just go somewhere else. That's what happens. That's why every time the botters get banned, they come back again, because the money is good enough that they're going to evade stuff to get it. It's CCP's responsibility to police the game, not the players. And as much as we don't like RMT and as much as we don't like botting, there's only so much that players can do, even alliance leaders. And to expect that an alliance leader, especially right now when the game is on the ropes and we are seeing player counts dropping and things to do have dried up, to think that an alliance leader is not going to take information provided by anybody that gives him a chance to get a good fight and use it, that is absurd. That is how the game dies. When everybody decides that the best way to play the game is to not play the game, even if by doing that, you're denying RMTers money or you're denying botters money, that's not how you win the game. That is killing the patient to fix the disease. You don't say, oh, I see that you've got the flu. I can cure you of that and then shoot you in the head. That's not how it works. So let's not do that here. Let's go back and let's just play the game. And if the information that Minton has about Cable is true, CCP should be able to take that information, review it like what you would expect in an investigation, and decide that, and then boom, they can take action, and then we don't have to worry about this anymore. But don't try to put this back on Darkshines or Pando or Merkelchen or anybody to try to argue that it's our responsibility to clean up the mess that, frankly, Minton helped make over the last year. It's not our job. We're here to play a game.
And the first thread, like, it sounds like he has a good point. It sounds like he's on to something. Then he creates this next thread where it's basically this grand Imperium conspiracy to work with Cable, where, like, I don't think there's anybody in Imperium leadership who doesn't despise the guy. But somehow we have this RMT alliance with him, and it just goes off completely into crazy land. Like, he's undermining his entire goal with this by basically invoking space aliens here.
Am I a bad person for kind of getting the feeling that his real problem with Cable is that Cable's getting the money that he wants?
I think that's what happened. I think they had the deal. We know they had the deal. It looks like the deal fell apart somehow, and now Minton is the shunned, bitter ex-girlfriend.
Gotta love it when that happens.
He's trying to make this the Imperium, despite the written agreement, and his evidence of dealing with Cable is that we shot a freighter piloted by Cable when he tried to ninja the loot from a Satio that we ran, and NCPL tried to help him do it. And that's his evidence against us.
That's what we did. Apparently that is collusion, Malky. That's collusion. That's it. Ban us all again.
Executions for everybody.
That's what we're going to do. All right, enough of this nonsense. We are done with Reddit drama for the week. Again, thank you guys for dealing with us. We just wanted to bring that up because we were kind of annoyed that this guy went after some of our friends, including our dear friend Merkelchen here. And again, nobody in the Imperium supports botting or RMT. You won't see us on the pie chart of shame. And we're going to keep doing that. But that doesn't mean we're going to stop playing the game so that you can get your white whale Ahab. All right. That's another literary reference. I've made two in 2 weeks. I hope people get these. I hope you people read books.
I feel
Just
like
saying.
Moby Dick is pretty safe. Especially
Is that
with
safe?
this
Do you think
crowd,
people
yeah.
get it? Maybe they'll remember like Rathacon or something. They'll get it. Thank you. See, Malcanis is reading a book. All right, we're going to go into our top story of the day, which is mining changes, protests, and the CSM. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today a panel of some of the most experienced, most well-known, most beloved CSM members of all time. We have them going back 10 years to CSM number 8, which was the first CSM of the modern era, which I have declared as the era of the single transferable vote system that we all know and can't really figure out unless we're experts in election law like me. And we have the two longest serving CSM members with us. We have a nominate who served 6 terms, and we have Steve Rnukin, who also served 6 terms. Steve was the longest serving. Now he's tied for longest serving, and that means he has to run again. So welcome to the first major outing of your new CSM campaign, Steve. I'll let you go first. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience so folks know who you are? Who don't. Unmute. Unmute yourself, Steve. There you go. It wasn't me this time, guys.
Okay. It's because Zoom is terrible and I hate it.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I'm not quite the first outing. I did release a video month and a half ago, 2 months ago, and annoyed people by giving it a 24-hour release timer.
Oh, you pulled a CCP on them, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I saw CCP did it, so it seemed like a good idea.
There you go.
But yeah, so I'm Steve Rnukin. I run Fuzzwork Enterprises, where you can go and get a bunch of industrial tools for the people who don't need to specialize too much. It will do most of what you need. The bigger producers will probably want to do their own tools, but they can get started with what I use. And it's freely available to everyone. Also market data, conversions of DSDE, Eve mail, etc. I spend my time in HiSec. I make stuff, I mine, although I haven't mined for a while. Yeah. Just been getting on with stuff.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm going to have to destroy your nominate and also get elected for one more term.
There you go. He's got to beat Nam. He can't let him get in there. So Steve served on CSMs 9 through 14.
Yep, correct.
Nam has to take a break, then he can run again. 9 through 14. So that was 2012 through 2019. And there were a lot of crazy changes that happened during that time. So we're going to get to those when we talk about CSM related stuff.
Yep.
Our other friend, my dear friend, my sea daddy, as I say, because, you know, in my business, when you're the new guy on the ship and you come in, there's somebody that becomes your mentor, and they tell you what it's like, and they teach you things, and they set you down and tell you how things really work out here. And Malcanis was the guy that did that for me. Malc was my guy back when I ran the first time on CSM 13, and he sat me down, and the first thing he asked me was, what the hell is wrong with you? Why do you want to do this? And that's the first question that everyone should ask somebody who wants to run for CSM. But Malcanis, you're here. Introduce yourself to the crowd, and then I will say more nice things about you when you're done talking.
As I recall it, the first thing that I said to you was, don't expect anybody to be grateful.
That too.
Because they won't be.
Right.
So I was on the CSM for one turn because, like, I don't know, it just seemed like the time to do it. People kept telling me to do it. So, okay. You know, maybe they were right. I specifically went on intending to only do it for one term because if you do that, you liberate yourself from a lot of constraints. You don't have to care about anyone judging your record or what you did or what you said. And I wasn't prepared to be constrained on what feedback I gave to CCP or indeed on the Evo forums. So I wasn't. constrained. CCP at that time were distressingly reluctant to come up with terrible ideas. The only really bad thing that was put forward was the one that they introduced just recently. You know, the thing, give us like 600 quid and you can have all the skill points that you would have had if you hadn't abandoned that alt in 2004. And that was that CCP Zinfandel? I feel like it was. And we told him to put that idea in the fire because it's so obviously damaging and exploitable. And really, that was kind of like my self-imposed brief, was just to be the cynical asshole who would tell CCP, if you go ahead with such and such idea, here are some obvious ways that it can be exploited. So either don't do it or at least put in some mitigations to those exploits. But really, it was a super constructive term. I mean, we were, I think the phrase I used to use, we were like the Boy Scout CSM right up till the end. Right up till the end. Like the finish line was in sight. We'd actually had Dolan make arrangements for our tickets to Reykjavik and our FanFest invites and flight bookings and whatnot. Then the whole Erotica 1 thing kicked off, which I expect no one here remembers, so no one's interested in hearing about.
I don't think that's true, but we'll get to that in a little while. So
I'd like to go to the bonus room.
Oh man, yeah. we're gonna have to teach you guys all about that fun story so that he can do it justice. But now I want to say something for the record. One of the reasons why we love having Malcanis here is, as you all know, to serve on the CSM, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement with the company, which basically prohibits you from releasing any information, proprietary or otherwise, that they provide to you in your capacity as a CSM member for 5 years following the last time you received any proprietary information. So since Merck and Nam and I are currently serving, and Steve is within that 5-year period, we're also covered by the NDA. Malcanis is not. So he can talk about all the stuff that happened when he was there, what they said, how they worked out, and any of that kind of stuff. And it's one of the other reasons why I wanted him here, because he can provide more candid information about what it was like back then than the rest of us can. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, CCP Zinfandel is also known as our dear friend Carneros, who's in the chat, who says that wasn't exactly what he suggested, Malky, but it was the right idea. So there you go. Anyway.
Last idea, and it should have been the fire.
Yeah,
but now it's in the game,
getting
right?
A phone call, I'm afraid. I'll pop back in shortly.
All right, Steve, take your call and come on back. We'll be right here. Don't turn your camera off. Ah, shit. There you go. All right, don't turn it off. I got to move these guys around. So now, see this. All right.
God, I love this shit.
This is bullshit. You know why this is bullshit? This is Merc's wet dream, because this happens to him every night on Rampage, and he loves it when I have to go and do this stuff real fast. But look how fast I am. Look how fast I am. I am super fast.
Pretty
Boom.
good stuff.
Fixed. That's how good I am. Anyway,
I mean, the benefit of having somebody who's not NDA'd is they can kind of provide maybe feedback slightly more candid than what we have, but at the same time, maybe we're not like actively seeking like a gotcha moment or some kind of dunk on CCP. I think the reason that this is coming up for the most part is what transpired over the course of the last week. You had a tough dev blog. There was a whole week of chaos surrounding it, and people that have been on the CSM before know what the back end of that looks like, because there is a lot of give and take and shimmy and shake and bake going on with the CSM and CCP. And yes, people are shooting fireworks at monuments. Yes, there's a new angry Reddit thread every 11 seconds, but somebody actually has to do the fucking work. And that's usually us and them. And whether or not, we're in like a boy, we told you we shouldn't have done X, Y, or Z. You got to just sort of face the music and try to make the best of the situation. So what do we think? I mean, we've had a couple days to digest it. What are we thinking about controversy here? I mean, is the controversy gone, Brisk, or are we still mired in scary stuff?
Well, I think you guys all saw the dev blog that went out yesterday. I'm going to cover that in about 5 seconds after we talk about the protests. I think The protest for me, and I've said this repeatedly. I made this point in the CSM meeting we had on Wednesday. I've tried to explain it to everybody that'll listen, including my fellow CSM members, some of whom don't seem to get it. The protests were not about this patch. The patch was the thing that broke the camel's back, or at least the announcement of the first part of the patch. This was not spontaneous. It wasn't just about that. It was about the arc of the economics and the ecosystem of the game over the last 2 years. We've been mired in the shortage scarcity phase for a while. We started doing some redistribution, but players are ready to get over it. They want the economy to be what it is. They want to figure out the meta, and they want to go play the game, and they don't want to keep waiting to see what's going to change next. It's been going on for too long. 2 years is an eternity in game development time. Most MMOs don't have 2-year development cycles or 3-year development cycles. They're over very quickly. Some games don't even last that long. We're talking about an 18-year-old game. You're spending like an eighth of the time the game has been up doing this. It's a long time, and people are tired of it. And I think what they saw was they had gotten it in their heads. Players had gotten it in their heads through, I don't think, any fault of their own. And I really don't think CCP is wrong, because I think there's just a disconnect in communication between what CCP thinks players expect and what players actually do expect. And the result was they thought scarcity was ending. We see Age of Prosperity. We see things like, oh, we're finally getting out of this. This phase is over. And then they get a dev blog that includes a bunch of stuff that feels like scarcity to them. And it just shook the community to its core. And that was the result was a lot of active protesting in ways we haven't seen. And I'm not going to talk about the number of pilots in space or how many people were shooting the Jita Monument, because I don't think that matters. I don't think anybody can argue that there weren't protests. I don't think anybody can argue that players weren't mad. And that's what's important. But I think if we don't recognize what they were mad about, and we only think it was about this patch, or they nerfed the Rourke Wall, or they did X, then I think we're doing a disservice to the players for not listening to them. And we're doing a disservice to CCP because we're giving them bad info on what they need to fix to make everybody happy. What do you guys think? Is that fair, Nom Nom?
I think this is, you really need to go back and look at Incarna. When Incarna came out, people weren't mad about the monocle. If it was just the monocle, it would have been a non-issue. But it was very much the same thing. The game had been stagnant for multiple years as all the development resources was going into this walking in stations thing. And we finally came out. We got walking in closets. We got the monocle there as an extra little bit of insult. We got the greed is good as an extra bit of insult. And so the players were mad about that. But the anger was about the fact that we've been sitting here for 2 years, and all that we had to show for it was a closet and a $60 monocle. And that's what people were mad about. And similarly here, it's not the specifics of the mining change that people were really mad about. It was the fact that we've been sitting here for 2 years with a broken economy. The economy is still broken, and in large sections of it are completely non-functional. You can't build capital ships at all. And then we get a dev blog saying Age of Prosperity, and then we get another dev blog, well, more scarcity. Like, where it's all stick, no carrot.
Malcanis, what's your take? You've been around a long time. You've seen this stuff. What's your take?
So I'm not an industry expert. I cannot tell you how many units of titanium are required to make a Heron or any of that jazz. I think we need to take it up a level or two to see where where they're coming from. And it seems that Incarna and Age of Prosperity, are we going to go with that? The prosperity crisis?
There you go. We can call it that. We can call it the crisis, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Incarna crisis and prosperity crisis basically come from a similar point in that CCP have got an idea of what they want us to be doing, and that is in conflict with what we want to do. Like, there are points of intersection, yes, but also much greater areas where basically their vision of how we are, they envisage us engaging with New Eden, are totally different to the way that we want to. So it kind of feels like they're in the grip of the fail heap challenge old romantics. And I post on fail heap challenge, and I love those guys. So, but they're assholes who've got no idea what's good for Eve because they don't play it anymore and haven't done for a long time. And you can see it in things like yet another special low sec only PvE resource. Like, okay, the first 11 didn't work. The 12th special low sec only PvE resource will make low sec great again. Totally ignoring the fact that what made low sec great was in 2003, 4, and 5-ish, I guess, to an extent. Eve was a totally undocumented and, for the time, incredibly huge game where no one really knew what it was doing. Most people only had 5 or 6 or 10 million skill points, so null-sec rats were too scary. So they went to low-sec and died in droves in the bells. And that's not a rewindable scenario. It doesn't matter how many Mordus Legion fucking overpowered DED space. What are all the other things that low sec gets? You see where I'm coming from anyway. The point is that they're trying to make it, they're trying to make that condition happen again, and they're trying to treat the game as if it can be rewound. So in my opinion, the existing changes are basically a way to nerf super capitals and capital proliferation without actually really nerfing super capitals and capitals. But you can't just take it back. You can't just say to people, well, gee, thanks for having 7 roll crawl alts, and that made our bottom line look awesome for a while, but now we don't want you to do that anymore. Thanks for the money, but you don't get that value anymore. Bye. And when you are in a situation where you've changed from a subscription game to a microtransaction game, because it is, there's no point denying it anymore. You know, anyone who's ashamed to play a freemium RMT game has left already. The rest of us we've had to make peace with that. Okay. Anytime you do a very high amplitude swing between this high skill point, high investment way of engaging with the game and some other one, you've got to defend yourself against the obvious accusation that the magnitude of the swing is, at least in part, driven by the fact that you know that people will pay you for extractors to extract all those skill points and then pay you again. Well, okay, they don't pay again, but you know what I mean. They'll pay the market again for injectors to re-inject in something else. And even if people quit, great. They get, they extract their raw call alts on the way out. CCP get a year's subscription worth of Plex used up. Okay, maybe that's not what drove the decision, but you've got to be pretty thorough in making sure that people are clear that that's not why you're doing it, and you've got to be convincing, and they failed. Because, frankly, I think that is what has driven it.
And I think that is one of the problems that I think currently exists at CCP at least from an outside perspective. And this is not using any NDA knowledge, just looking at it from I'm looking at this. If I were a business investor looking at this, you've got the game development team that's working on changes to the game. You've got the marketing team that's trying to sell widgets. They want to go out and sell skill extractors. They want to sell hyperlink nodes. They want to sell Plex. They want to sell skins. They're going to go out, they're going to do sales on Omega Time. They're going to do sales on Plex. They're going to do sales on all this other kind of stuff. And their timeline is driven by quarterly marketing data. It's driven by what kind of numbers they need to post to meet their internal projections and all other kind of stuff. And it's divorced completely from the development cycle. But damn, if you've got a coincidence that shows up, like, for example, a couple of days before this blog hits, they do a sale on extractors, you're going to spike the suspicion nodes of every single person that plays this game. And it doesn't matter whether it was a coincidence or whether it was intentional. You're going to get accused of it, and you're going to get the bad press for it. And so I think, if anything, one thing I would love to see is marketing and development getting a little bit, more on the same page so that they don't make mistakes like that. Or at least if they are aware of that they're being careful when they do this stuff. Now,
I don't know if I don't know if development is talking to marketing or not, but marketing sure as hell is paying attention to what development is doing. And I do not buy for a second that these are coincidences. If it happens once, it's a coincidence. But given that every major nerf that has happened has been immediately followed by some sort of marketing campaign, hey, get rich by buying Plex. Yeah, I don't buy for a second that that's a coincidence.
And that's the thing. So if you're losing the CSM member with the most experience and the most insight into the company, then imagine what a regular player who doesn't have that kind of experience and insight is going to think. Okay. Now I want to go through these changes because I think CCP did something pretty unprecedented for them. And we had a full slate of changes to a worked on feature within a week. And not only did they drop this before the weekend so that we could talk about it on the show, and I know that wasn't the reason, but I appreciate that they did that. They dropped it at like midnight on a Friday, which meant that there were people up at CCP working that late. I give them credit for that because we appreciate when they take the time to go out there and bust their asses when they know that the players care about this. So I'm going to pull up the From Extraction to Production update and walk you guys through it because I think there's some important things in here I want to go over. So here we go. Let me fix Nam and Steve because you guys got flipped. And Malcanis. There you go. Let me get the cameras right so people know who you are. I don't want anybody thinking that you're not who you are. And then we'll go through this. So, boom, done. See how fast I am, Merc?
You're actually not bad at that at all. I don't know why it's such a clusterfuck when I try to do it. I think I have too many fields in my frames because I'm always grabbing the wrong thing. So hats off to you, sir. Thank you. Hats off to the folks burning the midnight oil up in Reykjavik. Appreciate it.
I am an elite athlete when it comes to this stuff. So, all right. So first of all, it's been a week since the dev blog. It was last Friday. They have taken player feedback. They've listened to the CSM. They've listened to people complaining on the forums. I've listened to folks on Reddit. They've taken as much constructive stuff and they've decided they're going to do a bunch of changes to what they announced last week. First off, number one, compression. This is big. Okay. Compression was a major thing. I'm going to go circle it like that. This was the major thing that they announced that I thought was going to be interesting. And they basically have rolled that back completely. They're going to push this back to the beginning of next year. They say compression is vital to the redistribution phase, but the way that they had created it was not fun. The user experience was not good. We showed you last week on the show that it would have taken hours and hours and hours to compress the moon ore from just one R64 moon. And I think they have decided that they're going to leave the current compression in the game until they can go back and do a much broader fix with a better user experience. Thank you. That is exactly what we would like you guys to do all the time. And there's a saying in game development that we have heard many, many times, and that is you can do it right or you can do it fast. You can't do it both. And I think in this situation, we all want them to do it right. And if it means punting this for a couple of months to get it right in the beginning of next year, that's fair, and I think we're all okay with it. Second thing, mining efficiency. They're talking about the waste probability, the waste mechanic. They have dialed back significantly the waste mechanic for a number of ships. They are dropping the Tech 1 modules now no longer have high waste probability. Tech 2 has the same as they did before. Ore modules has the same as they did before. Drones was reduced quite a bit. And the mining crystals were changed as well. Now, some people are still complaining because T2, which is the most commonly used of the mining modules and skills, has the most waste. But the issue that we had last week when they announced this was that Tech 1 and the low-level skills had the worst. And it was punishing newer players, and it was going to make a situation where new players were not going to be allowed to go mine anything because the amount of waste that they produced was so much, they were costing the folks that had better skills money, and they'd get shunned. That's all been removed. That's been taken out. That's a good thing. Thank you. That's exactly one of the biggest issues that we had, that players had with that mechanic. Now, I don't like the wastage mechanic at all. I wish it would just go away completely. But at the very least, I understand why they did it. And they did change this so that what it was honestly a legitimate but the children argument. We hear a lot of but the children arguments in EVE Online, but sometimes some are more valid than others. This was a valid one. And I think that fixes that issue, and I appreciate that they did that. They have made changes to the work walls, and I have some slides here I'm going to throw up. We're going to look at, so the boosted yield per ship. Let me go to my center screen.
This stuff was really nice, actually. I hope they always do this when they make ship changes with the before and after, because then we're not having to do trigonometry to like figure out what the hell a freaking mining laser does or whatever. That was very helpful.
Right. I think the
comparison tool in game. Use it for your dev blogs.
Yeah, I think the initial reception of the dev blog would have been a lot better if the impact of all the changes was better laid out.
And I think they did a great job of laying that out and giving us before and afters, which made it possible for our dear friend Riv, who is the INN editor-in-chief, to put together these handy-dandy graphs for the Meta Show for us. And I think she has provided them to CCP. But if you look here, with the changes, the boosted yield per ship, and we assume it's boosted, the Rourke is a slight nerf from 160 to 120. But then you'll see the way that they have set this up, the Hulk is way better than it was before. The Mackinac, the Skiff, the Coveter, the Retriever, the Procure all mine more than they could before. And you can see that with the Type 2 crystals. Now, in addition, she also put together a ship comparison for inactive, looking at the Rourke compared to when the core is not going versus the other types of ships. And again, everything is reduced, but they've set this up because what they want to do is make the Rourke Wall not a solo mining ship, not the best. It's still a good mining ship, but it's better in a fleet as a fleet booster with a bunch of subcaps. That was what they wanted to do. We can argue whether that's the right idea. We can argue whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think a lot of people don't like it, but that's the direction that they've chosen to go. And I think at least now what they've done makes it a little bit better than what it was before, at least what they proposed. And then finally, you can look at the different types of stuff. So ice mining, for example, the Rourke is almost as good as it was before. And the Hulk is way better than it was for ice. And you're going to see Coveters also way better than they were for ice. You're going to see different usage for these ships, which I think is good. And that I think is a benefit that we're all going to have to keep an eye out, because we're going to keep basically track this stuff and see if it ends up playing out the way that we think it's going to play out. But I think these changes are better than what we saw in the first dev blog, arguably. Some people may disagree and they can yell, but that's it. Go ahead.
Hopefully nobody interprets this as us like trying to sell these changes, much like the RMT guy. We nothing these changes. They just are what they are. We're talking about them just rationally. I think it's helpful for the community. Maybe these changes point out that if between your strings of F words on Reddit, you put what you think a good idea would be, maybe it ends up as a bullet point in one of these things down the road. I'd rather we do a lot of the cleaning up earlier in the process than we did at this time, but at least there was some cleaning up that was done ultimately. So for better or for worse, we're just kind of giving you guys, this is what it looks like now. That's where you're at. And, you can decide whether you think that they've gone far enough, too far, not far enough, whatever, And
I mean, when I say better, let me be clear. I'm not saying that I like these changes or that I think they're the right thing to do. I wish Hall of Scarcity had gone away from the beginning. I don't like any of this stuff. And frankly, when it comes to mining, I'm not a huge fan of this. But what I saw last week was a bunch of changes that were made that enraged a certain portion of the population, that broke the camel's back with this one last straw that people couldn't take. And I saw CCP take a week and revisit all the stuff that they thought they knew, all the stuff that they were talking about, and listen to player feedback and make changes based on that. And I appreciate that they did that. And as I have told you guys 10,000 times, if I've told you once, when you ask someone to do something and they do it, the correct response is not, well, why didn't you do that in the first place? The correct response is thank you. So thank you for doing this. I may not still like it. I may not still think it's the greatest thing ever. I may still want to blow the whole scarcity thing up, but we asked you to do something and you did it. and you deserve credit for that. And I'm going to give it to you because I gave it to you hard last week. I'm not going to be an asshole and not admit that you didn't listen and you didn't make changes, even if some of these changes are not the ones that we would have made. Now, barges and exhumers, this is a big one. They're going to work with the CSM to increase the EHP of all barges and exhumers as well as their mining yield. That was a big thing. I know that a number of the other CSM members have been working with them on those issues. They have presented a whole slew of changes that I think that the team is working on, and I'm happy that they did that. I don't think it's necessary for us to always do that, but we did, and I appreciate the work that went into that. There were proposed changes to the Venture, the expedition frigates, and the Porpoise that were not at all positively received, including they were taking away the gas bonuses, some of these ships and stuff like that. That's all being reverted. That was a big win, I think, for the people that fly those ships and were very upset with the changes. So that's people listening. And then they are at the very end, they put in some stuff on the strip miners that compares the stuff. You can look at that if you want. They haven't changed anything on the resource distributions, except they're looking at the R4 Moon resource distribution, which I think was another thing that we heard a lot about from players that they were upset about, that they wanted to see that change because it was impacting the way that they were using R4 material. They're going to publish a winter blog next week that's going to include further insight into what is going on for Eve. And that is, to me, what I am waiting for. Because what I said on Wednesday in our CSM meeting, when I got the chance to give my impassioned speech, and as I said, players want hope. We want to be excited about things coming, not worrying about what the next nerf is. And they listened to me, and I told them, here's things we want. We want changes to Citadel so they're not constantly stopping content. I said, we want faction warfare revamp. We want more ships, new ships. We want more ships in space. We want new missions. We want PvP capital change so that there's balance so we can get people. But basically, we want something to look forward to, and we haven't had that in a long time. And every major change has been a nerf, and people are tired of it. Please give us something that we will get excited about. And that was my impassioned plea. And I'm hoping that we'll see some of that in this winter blog, but I don't know. So what's your guys' take on that?
So I think they did a good job as far as cleaning up this patch, but I think there's one big piece missing, which is there's been discussion of an industrial jump bridge on the Rorqual.
Yes.
And like this patch is essentially moving mining back into exhumers and barges. And I think doing that without the industrial jump bridge is a massive disservice to the barges. It's going to make moving a lot more difficult for people, or moving to the barges rather. And I really think that the whole thing should be delayed so that they're doing those together. The jump bridge change should be part of this.
I agree. Malc, don't raise your hand because I'm not looking at you. Just jump in and shut me up. So what did you want to say?
I'll jump in. So first, reaction to your lovely speech. Beautifully delivered.
Thank you.
With an excellent tie. Thank you, kind master, for only giving us 2 days in the box instead of 5 days in the box for not picking enough cotton. We have to give you credit for that. You've met us halfway.
I knew you were going to say
2 days
that.
in the box.
I knew you were going to give me that.
I said it. And really, it is kind of classic CCP is that they decided they don't like something, which is Rorquals produce too many minerals. And yes, they do. Right. Okay. Age of abundance, if you want, the 2016 to 2019. Let's be reasonable. Rorks were shitting out far too much minerals. It was ridiculous. You could buy Aeons in 1DQ for like, what, 9 bill? Something like that.
No, it got to be pretty low, right?
Yeah. I paid 30 billion for my Titan.
Exactly.
Ridiculous.
Right. It was ridiculous. It did need fixing. But CCP being CCP, they can't just nerf something one way or two ways. They have to get the whole Clockwork Orange gang and just kick it and kick it and kick it until it's dead and bleeding and broken. Okay, they never just nerf it a bit. Okay, but going back to what I said before about you can't rewind time. Well, the fact is that they did sell a lot of people a lot of skill injectors to get those raw ults. Those are their customers. They can't just say, yeah, psych, game balance. Thanks for the money, chumps. Okay, you've got to give someone something to do with those ults. Otherwise, it's going to cost them a lot of money. And it's going to cost them a lot of customers because people are going to feel tricked because they have been tricked. Okay. I hate super capitals. I am a death to all supers. And if my take on this is CCP are that desperate to nerf supers. Oh, I don't know. Maybe nerf super capitals, right? Don't nerf the rest of the game because you're too scared to annoy Titan pilots, because it feels like they're absolutely okay to give all the Rorqual guys a kick in the yarbles as long as they don't really offend all the Titan guys. That's what this feels like. That's what this boils down to, right? And they're right to say we need to rein in super capitals because fundamentally 99% of the time they're fight presenters. How many times, Brisk, have you been on a Kiki fleet in, let's say, FRT space? We turn up, we catch a couple of Rorquals, we start shooting them, 8,000 super carriers turn up, and that's it, fight's over, bye, and there's nothing you can do about it.
We kill some fighters and then we run away or we die.
Yeah. There's nothing that anyone can do about mass super caps except have even more massed super caps. Okay, and if it's mandatory, it's overpowered. Great. Okay, fine. You want less super capitals. You don't want super capitals to be fight preventers. Ace, right? They've burned everything to try and make super capitals be collateral damage without offending the existing super capital owners. Okay, so we only get 2 days in the box instead of 5 days in the box to avoid offending the Titan pilots.
I agree with you completely. I think it would have been a lot better for them to look at the 30 billion ISK Titans and the 10 billion ISK super carriers and rebalance those ships to match their cost.
Yeah, although then you can also go
500 million ISK T1 battleships. You know, was the T1 battleship meta oppressive? Were people complaining that T1 battleships were being used too much? God damn it!
Forbid.
Abaddon's everywhere, nothing but rocks. Jesus.
Steve, I want to ask you your take on this, on the patch and the patch changes, because I'd like to hear. You are known for being the industry guy. Fuzzworks is a huge thing. Everybody uses it. What's your take on all of this and how they handled themselves? CCP, I mean.
CCP's main problem, I think, has always been communication. Communication with the CSM, communication with players, even communication with themselves. So, yeah, it probably would have helped if they'd told people, these are our goals. So that can be discussed before, this is how we're going to take our goals, which is what we get all the time with this. Anyone with half a brain could see that Rorqual changes have been coming. They should happen. Yeah, there is a minds too much. There should not be this is the best ship ever for this one job, and all the smaller ones are not worth it. Yeah, it sucks for the people who fly Vorks. There's only so much that can be done there. Yeah, I've got a blog post on the old changes. I haven't written one on the new ones. I can understand, I think, where they were going with waste. Did I like it? There's some nice touches with it. I like the fact that it's an optimization problem, because that's more interesting than just this is the best thing to use to mine. There's actually a trade-off there. But yeah, they should have communicated better in the first place so people could see their goals. And then we could discuss the goals rather than just discussing the changes on how to get to those goals. Yeah.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think, that's another thing. one of the questions that we often get as CSM members, and we never can answer this, is what does CCP think about this? What do they think about that? Why are they doing this? And we always say, you got to express that. You got to explain that to the players, because if they don't know where they're going, they're not going to know why you're doing it. They're not going to understand. They're just going to think it's a cash grab, or they're going to fill in the gap of information with whatever that comes in their heads. And the result is they're going to yell at you and they're going to yell at us. Now, we're running out of time. We're probably going to go a little bit over. We have 5 guests. We're talking about a lot of stuff. I don't want to just talk about only these changes, because I think one of the things that these changes, the entire process of the last week has highlighted, is the role of the Council of Stellar Management, the CSM. And I want to talk about that with you guys, because again, we have collectively here, Nam has 6 years, Steve has 6 years, Malcanis has 1, that's 13, plus my 4 and Merck's 5. That's, I don't even know the math. What,
it's like
30?
10,000, basically.
It's like a million years of experience. It's crazy. Million years of experience on the CSM, on the show. What I saw, what I feel like there is a view in the community that the CSM is either all powerful and we're fucking everything up, or completely powerless. So what's the point? And I think if there is a needle that swings between those two positions, we're closer to the what's the point side right now, because we told everybody, rightly so, that we've been telling CCP, at least some of us have been telling CCP, we told them what would happen when they put this out. And then it did. And it got in the heads of players that CCP doesn't listen to the CSM. That's a common thing we hear all the time. Like, the CSM should do this. And then someone responds, well, why? Nobody listens to them anyway. I want to get your guys' feedback on that whole idea. Do you think the company listens to the CSM? And I want to start with Steve, and then I'm going to go around the room, and everybody's going to get a chance to opine on this, because I think it's an important question, and I want everybody to have a chance to say. So, Steve, what do you think?
The first thing is, this CCP is not monolithic. Some people listen, some people don't listen. And just because someone listens doesn't mean that they necessarily agree with you, which is always a problem. They do not listen in the CSM cannot give instructions to people at CCP. That just flat doesn't happen. Can you persuade them? Sometimes. There have been changes which have happened differently because the CSM has spoken to them. And I can't talk about any of the ones in my term because, the NDA.
Still under the NDA.
It's all stuff which hasn't been talked about because it can't be talked about yet. And to be honest, probably when my NDA's up, I'm not going to bother talking about it anyway, because it's not actually of any interest to anyone by that point in time. But there were changes which would have happened, but they brought them to the CSM, and the CSM collectively went, no, that's a terrible idea. This is why it's a terrible idea. No, just no. And at that time, they went away and they came back with an alternate option. And that was great. But there have also been some people at CCP who have not listened to us. And they have been burnt because of it. And we've been tarred with the brush that the CCP don't listen. Some people do, some people don't. And there's no real way to solve that. I don't think anyone at CCP actually wants to ruin the game, because they get paid by CCP, and CCP makes its money through ETH. So they don't want to ruin that. They just have different opinions on what actually will work. Often wrong opinions.
Malc, what's your take on this from your experience?
Steve's absolutely right. There is no CCP. Okay, they're not a monolithic hive mind. Well, they weren't. There's. I mean, I don't know. Maybe things have changed. Iceland's a weird place. Where were we? Yes, there are individual teams. There are individual devs within the teams. If anyone on CSM8 from CSM8 is watching this, they'll certainly remember the difference between dealing with, what was the fella's name again? The American guy that they brought in to actually try and inject some commercial sensibility into marketing Eve.
That's Hulk Hogan you're thinking of.
No, he had a vaguely Cthulhu name. Was it, no, CC Cthulhu. That was him.
don't-
Lovely fella.
for our
Really
time.
liked him. I remember bringing out a £20 note and asking what was wrong with it, and he said nothing. I said, "Why don't you want it?" He said, "Well," and I said, "Well, because you won't let me buy things from you, like a mug or a T-shirt for a reasonable price." CCP are a bunch of individuals, and they will interact differently, and people have their pet ideas, and a lot of CCP devs are CCP players. If you want to know what CCP devs are like, head right on over to r/Eve and start reading. Okay, those are the people who become CCP devs. Okay, they're opinionated, they're rude, they're ignorant because they know about their little bit of Eve and they don't give a shit about anyone else's or anyone else's take on their little bit of Eve. Okay, and some of them will get an idea, what I like to call an aesthetic idea, the way things should be. Okay, Eve should have this kind of pirate. Eve should mostly be about battleships. Eve should W space shouldn't have people living in it, and so on and so forth. And they want to enforce those ideas. And then we get what we have today, a failure to communicate. Okay, so all those nice things that you just said that they're going to do are things that they should have been doing, and it feels like it's a lesson they have to keep relearning because, you know, staff turnover, and they keep recruiting from Eve players, for God's sake. And here we are, a failure to communicate.
Nam, what do you think? Do they listen or not?
When they want to. That's what it comes down to. No, I think Malcanis really hit it on the head there. That's the biggest problems between the CSM and CCP, and between CCP and the player base, have been when one or a small number of developers decides that Eve is supposed to work a certain way and decides that they're going to overhaul the game so that this is the case. We could go back to Grayscale and the jump bridges, and like his notion that the Eve universe was supposed to be run by freighters moving things around. And like, I mean, that's great from an aesthetic perspective. It's cool from a sci-fi perspective, the idea of all these freighters and fleets escorting them. But from the player's perspective, that is god awful, and nobody wants to do it.
Do you want to very, very quickly hear my CCP Grayscale story? And I quite liked him. Like, he was a nice guy. It was in CSM8 when they were doing the nullsec industry rework, and he was talking about freighter convoys and whatnot. And yes, I'm sure they were awesome. Remember what I said about rewinding time? You can't go back. And I said, so what you're saying is that nullsec just needs industry, just needs one more nerf, and then people will really want to do it. And here we are, 8 years later.
Mark, did they listen?
Everybody answer. We wouldn't do it if they didn't listen. This is what I'll tell people. To our 900 friends that are listening, I will tell you what you should be telling CCP right now. Let's stop screwing around with the ones and the zeros on the spreadsheet. You've had 2 years to do this economic bullshit. Let's turn the page now. This is the messaging we're going with. Let's turn the page. You've had 2 years of completely overhauling the NPE with what we've been told publicly is up to 95% of the development bandwidth at certain points. I know there were some times Hilmar said 70%. I mean, people throw around all kinds of numbers. Let's turn the page on that one. We are done with the economic bullshit. We are done with the new player bullshit. We care about new players. Just get them to the game. Let us handle the rest. We're the experts in this arena, doing the NPE for the 47th time. Who gives a shit? Let's just tie it off and move on. Players want fun things. They want new ships. Somebody has got to retool the mission system. It is so hysterically embarrassing. There are mobile games now that have mission systems that are 100 times more elaborate, complex, and rewarding than the shitty mission system in EVE. Give us new ships. Give us mission reworks. Pay some attention to faction warfare, for Christ's sake, and please don't hit them with a stick anymore. Let's get the carrot headed over in that direction. It is time for us to turn the page. Us as the customers, we need to start demanding, you had your time to do your stuff. We've screwed around with the spreadsheets for long enough. Nobody wants to even talk about this anymore. I get sick talking about the ones and zeros and the goddamn strip miners. It's time to be done with it. It's time to get through the foreplay and move on to what you know is next, baby. So this is what we are going to hold them to with what remains of our CSM tenures. I mean, this is a sandbox game unless you're a Goonswarm CSM, in which case you're going to have to go on cooldown here. So I'm not, unfortunately, going to be able to walk these changes all the way to the finish line, but I can assure you we are going to be shrieking and screaming to anyone that will listen, the few that do, about it's time to turn the page. The player base is absolutely over this. I don't need you guys. I don't need to tell you to check EVE Offline's 30-day moving averages for what player count is. It's not great. And it's not great because people are sick of this shit. So we just got to get to what's next. That is what we will demand. I know for those of you like people that feel like you need to protest and stuff like that, sadly, every time you shoot the monument, the fire sprinklers don't turn on in Reykjavik or anything like that. But you put enough people in the same place, they get loud enough, they get shrill enough, people start listening, right? So I think that they're in a situation now where maybe they are receptive to this messaging, and that is what we are going to do moving forward. To the audience, I encourage you guys to do the same. Let's stop with just strings of F-bombs on Reddit, or at least if there are strings of F-bombs, let's include a couple useful suggestions in there about what we would like to see, because that is the only thing that is going to crack us out of this. Scarcity will never end. Scarcity is just the economy such that it is right now. We're not getting them out of it. So let's just move on to something else. Thank you.
That's what I'm talking about. I've been waiting all night for a Merc rant, and we finally got it right at the end of the show. Now, I get asked this all the time. I'm going to ask you guys real quick. This is a yes or no question. You can give a little bit of a sentence or so, but this is controversial, and it is what we get asked all the time. And I want to find out from you guys, and I think I know the answers for most of you. Is a CSM worth it? Should there still be a CSM? What do you think? Mark, I'll start with you this time.
Yes. If for no other reason than to be somewhat of a guardrail. Like, granted, it is not a perfect safety system. It's like one of those railings on a really high cliff that you look at it and you think, boy, they should have made that a couple feet higher because people can still get over it. That is the CSM personified, basically. It's going to save some lives, but it's not going to save everybody's life.
Nam?
I think the CSM definitely still needs to be there, but CCP also needs to decide, do they want the CSM to be there? And if they want the CSM, they need to get their shit together and start working with the CSM like they have in previous years. And if they're not going to do that, then they should just disband it.
Malcanis.
Use it or lose it.
That's a great answer. I like it, Malky. Steve.
Yes. I wouldn't be running for his 7th term if I didn't think it was still worthwhile.
And I'll answer this last question, and then we're going to get out of here because you guys have gotten 10 extra minutes of time that I'm never going to get back from my life. Here's the deal. Again, you've got a large number of EVE players who run for the CSM every year, 40 plus every time. You get a number of us who win, who go on and serve. If I thought that this was a waste of my time, I wouldn't do it. If I thought that CCP never listened, I wouldn't do it. If I thought that I was not making a difference in the game for individual people, I wouldn't do it. There are other ways I would prefer spending the 20 plus hours a week that I deal with CSM related stuff. whether that's reading our Eve, whether it's reading the forums, whether it's talking to people, whether it's reading Eve mails where people try to explain the definition of extortion and get it wrong. When I listen to people complaining and asking and providing, hey, wouldn't it be great if we can do this? And then I tell them we already can. And they're like, oh, great. Thanks for fixing it for me, Brisk. All kinds of stuff. I wouldn't do all this stuff if I didn't think we made a difference. And I wouldn't do this if I didn't think that CCP got any value out of it. But I know that they do. And I think the last week has demonstrated, yes, yet again, that the CSM has value. Because the player crises, the player complaints, there was a lot of angry people. We took that, we distilled it, we provided it to them in a format where we were forceful, yet for the most part professional, and we got them to make changes. Maybe they're not the best changes, but they are changes. And when I saw dozens of people telling me, well, it doesn't matter what you guys do because they're not going to change anything anyway, go back and say, well, you know what? Don't go buy a lottery ticket, dude, because your luck's not in. So again, I think there is a value to it. Otherwise, I think none of us would have wasted our time, especially those of us who've done this multiple times. All right, gentlemen, I would be remiss if I did not notice that there's only one non-bearded person on the show right now, and he looks glorious. So, Malky, thank you for being so brave as to come on the show without a beard. I know it must have been very tough for you.
I it all off a couple of hours ago so I could look nice for your show, you know, because you do the thing with the tie and it's all smart. And
there you go. I had to taunt him. Listen, you guys don't understand. This is the first time I think most of us have seen Malcanis on camera. We've heard his voice in comms and listen in it, but I got him on camera, and I deserve a lot of credit from my Init Bros for that. So you guys better be nice to me. I expect Logi to put me on the watch lists because I got Malcanis on camera. Thank you. All right.
Brisk,
yes.
Before we go. You called me Malcanis like 147
I know.
times.
I never call you that. I know. Sorry, Mal. I know. I call Nom. We call Steve Fuzzy Steve. We call Malk. We call Merk. But I have to be professional. I use everybody's real full names the whole time. Anyway, gentlemen, this has been the Meta Show for November the 20th, 2021. Thank you, Malcanis, Malk, Steve Renukin, Steve, Fuzzy Steve, Innominate, Nom, Merkel Chen, Merk, for joining us today. I like the Havana Club. For those of you who are wondering, Steve Renukin, that is not a endorsement of us saying vote Steve Renukin for CSM. That's his actual alliance name. That's why it's there.
Vote Steve Renukin.
Pretty good. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to be raiding after the credits. We're going to raid Viper's Fang, so you can stick around and listen to Viper's Fang. I want to thank you all for being here. Matani will be back next week as we kick off potentially season 3 of the Meta Show. This is our second year, my second year doing the Meta Show. Ended today. We're starting year 3. I want to thank you all for watching. You have made this the most watched weekly Eve show. And we're happy that you're here with us because we love having you here. We love doing the show for you. We hope you keep coming back week after week for some of the best content in EVE Online. Thank you all for joining us. And you stay classy, New Eden.